Hey everyone, and welcome to Get Your Geek On's Marvel Cinematic Universe Retrospective. I'm Robert, that's Aaron. We're here to talk movie by movie through the MCU's Infinity Saga, 23 movies over 11 years.
Expect spoilers as we get into each movie, but we will start off each video by letting you know whether we consider this an essential movie for the overall arc of the MCU. Think of this as your guide for getting you into the MCU.
Right, I mean, there's a couple of filler movies, though if you're a completionist like we are, you might rate them all as essential. This week, we're talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. So the Guardians of the Galaxy are back in their very own sequel. We've got the May 2017 release. It returned our director James Gunn and starred Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Dave Bautista, Vin Diesel. We got Kurt Russell in this movie. Michael Rooker returns, as well as Karen Gillan. And it made $146 million on the opening weekend, $862 million over its run. Whew, definitely highly successful.
No, not at all.
But let's talk about whether or not it's essential. Aaron, what do you think?
After watching it, no, not really.
Not really. This movie in and of itself is contained, and there's really not much here for the Infinity Saga.
Not at all. I mean, ugh. Yeah.
That's all right. It's not.
But still watch it.
It's not really essential.
No.
Well, we're going to talk about whether or not you should watch it. But if for just the Infinity Saga, I think you can skip this one. All right, so
skip.
Going back a couple years, rewind, back to 2017, right? So we are now we're coming into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the first hit movie. You know, Guardians was a complete hit. Everybody loved it. So now what I remember is people were super excited for this movie. People were super excited for Volume 2. People were super excited to see Baby Groot. What do you remember about what people were excited about?
Yeah, kind of. I remember Baby Groot was like the big thing because everybody was sold. At the end of the first one, where you got the little dancing Groot,
right?
Everyone was excited to see Baby Groot come out. I know Kurt Russell being in it was a big thing too.
Yeah.
I remember a lot of people were like, "Oh, that's a big name they got for it."
And this was one of those characters that there was a little bit of a side deal with Fox at the time,
Really?
which is now under the Disney banner, where GYGO was originally one of those characters that sort of the rights were kind of with Fox, and so Marvel and Fox were like, hey, let's make a deal. And basically what it turned out to is you know, Marvel got the rights to use GYGO, and Fox got the rights to use Negasonic Teenage Warhead for Deadpool.
Oh, God.
Because that character actually, even though she's a mutant, was kind of, her rights were a little bit up in the air as well.
Yeah.
And so they kind of just, it was like, let's just smooth this out. You guys can have that character, we can have this character, no issue. So,
And everybody wins.
there you go. And everybody did win. Because now the mutants are back.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of the public expectation.
Yeah.
I remember personally, I feel like I was pretty much in the same boat. Like,
Yeah.
I loved the first movie. I was really excited for the sequel. Baby Groot, Kurt Russell. I was excited.
I was excited.
You know, talk about the first time you saw the movie. What did you think? What were your big takeaways?
The big takeaway I think I had was I was honestly so happy with the visual effects, especially with Kurt Russell being GYGO, and when he would regenerate and you would get like all the bones, the limbs, the veins, all that was so
It's a
cool.
cool look.
The particle effects when they blow up stuff is really, really detailed. And, you know, I know we've come a long ways with particle effects and how everything looks in animation and visual effects. And this movie, to me, even though Doctor Strange we just reviewed was really good, it was beautiful, this one just had some really cool elements to it that I really, really liked. But at the same time, I remember I also wasn't understanding what the sovereign people really were about.
Yeah.
I remember that for the first time.
Yeah, I would say, you know, I remember when I went to see this movie in theater, I remember being a little bit underwhelmed. Like, I thought the humor was not as good as the first movie. I thought, even though the music was good, it wasn't as good as the first movie.
Yeah.
There are still some things I really, really like. And I think Kurt Russell is one of those things. I think that, you know, the team itself, I really still like all of those characters. So I remember liking it, but I didn't love it.
Exactly.
All right, well, let's talk just kind of a quick summary. We're going to get into it.
Let's go.
So the Guardians are back. They've been living off their reputation, and they're contracting their services out to the Sovereign, as you mentioned. and they're battling an interdimensional monster, basically in exchange for Gamora's sister Nebula, who's the Sovereign's prisoner. They're gonna take that as payment. But Rocket ends up stealing from the Sovereign, and now they're chasing after the Guardians. The Guardians are have to run, and their ship is about to be destroyed. And a mysterious figure saves them.
1 inch tall.
Turns out to be GYGO, who claims to be Star-Lord's father, and also claims to be what's called a Celestial. The team decides to split up. Star-Lord, Gamora, and Drax go off with GYGO to his planet, and Mantis, who is his servant, is with them. And then Rocket stays behind. He's going to repair the ship. Groot and Nebula are with him. The Sovereign, meanwhile, they're very angry at the Guardians still. They contact Yondu, the leader of our Ravager crew, to track down the Guardians for them. He reveals that he had a tracer on the ship, and so he goes. But once he gets and he finds Rocket and Nebula and Groot, he actually reveals that he's not going to turn in the Guardians, and this causes members of his crew to be pretty angry with him. And it looks like there's about to be a giant showdown, and then Nebula shoots off Yondu's fin, and so with her help, the crew basically performs a mutiny and overthrows him. Yondu and Rocket end up getting imprisoned on the ship, and Nebula leaves to go and find and kill Gamora. So now, Rocket, Groot, and Yondu end up escaping with the help of Kraglin through a pretty funny scene. We'll talk about that when we get there. And they race off to GYGO's planet because Yondu knows that GYGO is evil. And he actually is looking to use Peter Star-Lord's power to take over the universe. That guy. The Guardians end up teaming up to take out GYGO, but Yondu sacrifices himself in order to save Peter. Shed a tear. Gamora and Nebula end up making up, truly become sisters throughout the third act of this movie. And so in the final battle, they are working together. The Guardians are all working together. Mantis is also helping out the Guardians. They're able to defeat GYGO. And then we get a bunch of post-credit scenes. So I feel like we'll talk about all of those. But that's kind of this movie in a nutshell. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts are. What stands out from this movie?
So my thoughts, they kind of stay very similar to my first watch of this film.
Yeah.
I love the space heroes. I'm a huge fan of Nova, Silver Surfer, Peter Quill. All of these people, Thanos, these are all of the people I love a lot besides my Earthbound Spider-Man love. I hated what they did to Mantis. And that's, even watching on this rewatch, I'm still not happy with what they did with her.
I would say that for this movie, part of what really takes it down for me is actually the character of Drax. I feel like it's almost a completely different character than the first movie.
I felt that too.
They almost turn him into an idiot. Like there's, in the opening scene, in the opening battle scene, which like is fantastic because you have Groot dancing around during the credits, and it's telling you what type of movie this is.
Yeah.
This is a comedy movie. We're here to have fun. The huge battle is taking place completely in the background.
You don't even really see the monster at this point.
Right. It doesn't matter because Groot's dancing around listening to Mr. Blue Sky, and we're all having fun. We're back with the Guardians. And that's really good. But you get these moments with Drax, like being, Peter says, they're some kind of battery. I don't remember, like Annulax batteries.
Yeah.
And he comes back and he's like, arbulary batteries. And you're like, what?
That wasn't even close.
Why doesn't Drax understand Star-Lord anymore? Like, I don't understand. And just weird things like that where he, in the first movie, it was like he's the guy that doesn't get metaphors, that he takes everything very literally. And in this movie, it's like his character has changed a lot. They try and turn him into kind of a Joker, and I like him better as the straight man. I like him better as the guy that doesn't understand the humor. But so I definitely there were some characters that I wasn't a big fan of. On the other hand, I thought the way they portrayed GYGO was fantastic. I thought Kurt Russell did a great job with that character, and then that shot that we get of the planet with his face on it is such a cool shot.
I forgot all about that until I saw it again. I was like, that's right. They do kind of hint that that's him.
GYGO, the living planet from the comics. So that's a cool moment. Obviously, I want to take a. You talked about the special effects at the beginning. The flashback scene of Kurt Russell, like in the
Oh
in
my
the
gosh,
80s,
yes.
it's amazing. It's maybe the best use of this de-aging technology that has ever
Yes.
been. And they've used it a lot. Marvel used it a lot. They used it with Michael Douglas in the Ant-Man movie.
Mhm.
They'll use it with Haley Atwell and other things.
Samuel Jackson.
Samuel Jackson in Captain Marvel.
This one's better though than all.
This is the best. It's so good. Like, and part of that is 1980s Kurt Russell. They've got a lot of footage.
Oh yeah,
He was in a bunch of movies
Yeah.
from that time period, and so they give him kind of the same hairstyle and all those things that he had back then. But oh my goodness, it's so
and
good.
when you look at that, it's like, did you pull this from another film?
It doesn't.
Like you
yeah,
can almost say that it looks that close
it's
to him.
incredible.
And I was so happy with that. You know,
So-
and
no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, but I'm glad you talked about Ego with the face, because in the comics he is the planet.
Right.
And this one I almost felt like a little disconnect from that, a little bit more, because in the comics it's literally the planet is talking.
Right. Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting how they still added that in there, because that's still kind of
I thought they
a
made
little
it work.
far fetched. Yeah,
I thought they made it work.
it's far fetched, I think, for anyone that's not into that. But you get the human of Kurt Russell, so
Yeah.
that helped.
So I really do think that this movie, the humor is very hit or miss for me.
Same.
All the stuff with Baby Groot I think is fantastic. I like the stuff with Star-Lord. His comedy still works. I think most of the stuff with Rocket still works. I don't like most of the stuff with Drax. And the running gag that I can't stand throughout the entire movie is Taserface. It doesn't work for me. It never did. It still doesn't. I still get annoyed by it every time. That moment where he calls the Sovereign, and she laughs at him over the name. It's like, I was
that's your
so
dying
checked
thing.
out. I
So
don't like that. I don't like that joke.
I think I joked with you about it last week, the week before. We were talking about Taserface. I don't know. There's got to be some hidden thing in there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Overall, like I said, the humor is just kind of hit or miss. It's definitely not as good as the first one for me. The music, I thought there were some really inventive music choices.
Yeah.
Mr. Blue Sky at the beginning, I think works really well over the opening credits. I think that there's some other moments. My Sweet Lord is playing as they arrive on Ego's planet. That's a cool.
That one's a good fit.
That really fits with that scene. So I thought they did a good job.
Father and Son, right, is one of the other ones at the end.
Yeah, Father and Son.
That one hit hard
for
too,
Yondu's funeral. That's definitely one of the things, and I did want to talk about that. The humor is hit or miss in this movie, but the heart of this movie is still there.
It
Just
is.
like in the first one, I think that's a really strong component of the Guardians movies, is that they really make you feel, whether it's the Rocket and Star-Lord kind of rivalry, where Rocket comes to realize that he's been pushing people away because he's so afraid of letting people in.
Yeah.
You have the relationship as Peter wants a father,
Yeah.
and he views Ego is my chance for this father. But then that moment, which there's been a few different moments, and we had the Iron Man with Winter Soldier, you killed my mom. We have the Martha moment from Batman v Superman, and then we have this moment where they use that really cool perspective shot that was made famous in Jaws, where you have Star-Lord finding out that Ego planted the brain tumor in his mom's head, and it's and you just get that moment where he's like, "What?"
Yeah.
And it's the "you killed my mom."
Killed my mom.
And it works in this
does.
movie. It works. They established that relationship in the first movie. How he's hung up on his mom and losing her when he was a kid, and all of these things. And so that coming back, is really the moment where Ego completely loses him. And I think that works really well. You have that the relationship between he and Gamora. You have the Nebula and Gamora relationship. There's a lot of really strong relationships in this movie, and that's what the heart of the Guardians is. It's about them being a family. There's a really great line in this movie where Star-Lord, when he's talking about Ego, and he says this is my chance for a family, and Gamora's like, I thought you already had one.
Yeah.
Like, aren't we your family? So yeah, I think that's what really stands out on a positive sense for me, is all of the relationships the characters have, the heart that they have. I think it still shines through.
I agree with that. I think my only problem with the whole love, well, not love, but the relationship side of it, where you have Ego and you have Peter talking, he's talking about the light, And I love how the one thing he makes is a ball. And you get the baseball.
He wants to play catch with his
play
dad.
catch. And I'm like, okay. But
Well,
it's so corny to me at this point.
It is corny, but I think it works.
It fit, but it was still like, okay. I can live with it, I guess. But it was just, that was a corny like relationship scene. I feel like it's like in every father-son relationship movie kind of thing. It's always gotta throw that ball.
Yeah.
But I did like that they kind of commented on his powers at that point and explains more of how he was able to hold an Infinity Stone.
Yep, that was cool. And overall, like I said, I think that there's a lot of really solid in this movie. Yeah. I do want to talk about things that I don't.
Okay.
The Sovereign. Anything and everything with the Sovereign, I don't like until the post-credit scene. The post-credit scene is the only part of anything with the Sovereign that I like. I didn't like the character design.
Nope.
I don't like their, kind of ethos of we can't risk the lives of any of our citizens, so all of their ships are remote controlled and remote piloted. I didn't, the physical comedy of her like walking in the snow on the little carpet was bad.
That was
I mean, I didn't like anything with the Sovereign.
What about the opening joke where she's basically coming on to Peter? Did that bother you even?
I don't like any of it. And that's the thing is, I wish this like you could make this movie without the Sovereign. Mm-hmm. Like you could have that climax at the end where they're also being attacked by the Sovereign. That could just be, manifestations of ego that are attacking them. Like you don't need the Sovereign in this movie.
No, I agree with that.
Like the opening where they're being attacked could be maybe another Ravager faction, that's causing their ship to be damaged or whatever. Like you could find a different way. I wish it wasn't the Sovereign. I don't like them. I don't like the actors that they use, the character design, the motivations, any of it. I'm just not a fan. I really, really hope that they don't come back in Guardians 3. I don't think they will because they've kind of time jumped. By the time we see the Guardians team again, it's been a couple years down the road. But I think we're definitely going to get Adam Warlock in Guardians 3. I really hope we don't get any more of the Sovereign. I just didn't like them at all.
I don't know. Well, see, that's what I thought I saw. They are quoted to be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
I don't want them.
So, I don't know. I thought I had seen something about that, so I wanted to look up too. But yeah, I mean, we might get them again. But it might be just a quick scene of they're bringing out Adam Warlock, and then maybe he'll just kill them all off for us and be like, thank God. Thank you, Adam.
All right, so the other one big thing that I did like that I want to talk about in the post-credit scene is Stan Lee's cameo. This is one of my favorite Stan Lee cameos
I forgot about
of all time. And it actually shows up in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're Rocket and Yondu and Groot are doing the jumps, and they, cross by Stan Lee as
a watcher.
A watcher, or at least someone who works for the Watchers. Mm-hmm. And, he's talking about all of his different cameos.
But that ties every cameo that he's the same person.
So good. So, I mean, I love Stan Lee, and I'm so glad that, he's been in all of these movies up to this point, and his cameos are really good. This is one of his best ones, for sure.
I really think it is, and I love that they essentially say that he is now considered a Watcher because of that scene. And I love that it really does tie that every single movie cameo, he is the same person, and he is watching all these superheroes come about, essentially. And I love it. Mr. Stank, I love that one too. But this was my favorite because you actually even get to see Utawu. I'm assuming it's Utawu. Uatu. I assume it's him because, I mean, they never say the names of the ones that are standing there watching him and talking with him.
I don't know. It's interesting. So they're going to do the What If animated show on
Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. I was gonna say Marvel Plus. I'm like, that's not it. It's Disney Plus. And they did cast Uatu, Jeffrey Wright, as that character. He is not in this movie, so I don't know if Uatu is in this movie or not. I don't know if they'll play into that at all, but it was a cool concept.
And I'm hoping that maybe when the Celestials come out, they'll tie into the Watchers.
Eternals.
Eternals. Will tie into the Watchers because they are a race that in the comics they essentially are all killed off except him. He's the only one left, and he still does monitor everything in the universe. That's a major event, so it'd be cool to see how he does. But it does suck that we get these cameo here, but we don't see anything in Infinity War or Endgame with these guys. That would have been a cool
with
thing.
The Watchers, you mean?
Yeah, just like a little like character in the background standing somewhere, like, oh, who's that guy? Okay, well, whatever. But it should have been like a silhouette.
Stan Lee, and he's watching.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was. He was watching everything.
So, all right. Any other like standout
Um,
scenes or things that really you wanted to talk about?
I mean, honestly, I want to love this movie.
Sure.
I want to so bad, and I keep coming in here. And as we get closer to the newer movies, these ones I haven't watched as often as I've watched my older ones.
Yeah.
And there's something that's missing for me in this movie. I don't know if like you said, it's the comedy, if it's I don't know. The relationships parts are amazing, especially. I honestly I love the third act. I probably if I could fast forward just to the third act,
Sure.
I'd be happy.
You can. That's how Blu-rays work.
Exactly. It's exactly how they work. Yeah. See what he did there. But like the rest of the movie is just so. I don't like. I mean, I love Mantis in the comics because she is pretty much a martial artist. You know, she uses her empath abilities in different ways. In this one, she's just an empath.
Right.
They don't talk about anything about her except that she even comments herself she's a flea on a dog almost. But how I guess maybe like where it comes back to what you said with Drax. He just pretty much insults her the whole time, and I'm like, you're kind of being lack of a better term, a dick at this point, because it's like you're the jokes with him and her. I only like the first where you can pet her, and that was the only thing I liked
with the joke
with
Rocket.
Rocket. Oh, it's a practical joke. That was the only time I laughed a little bit. Everything else, he's cutting her down, he's treating her like crap, and then when he's like in the bed, like, oh, I don't want to sleep with you.
Yeah, the gagging.
Yeah, I was like, that's so
even
dumb.
when they're on the ship and she reads Peter and then he's like laughing, oh, and I'm like,
yeah,
like it's just so weird. I will say the one thing that I like from Drax, I think my favorite scene of him is when they first leave the Sovereign Planet and he's talking with Peter and he's like, there are two kinds of beings in this universe: those who dance and those who do not. And and I like that little joke was funny as he's like telling Peter about his wife and how I knew that she was the one for me because the most melodious song could be playing and she wouldn't even move a muscle. You know? And you're like, okay, I like this part.
That was like the one moment of like, here's old Drax from the first film. Okay, he's gone now. What? I mean, I love Drax the Destroyer in the comics, and in this one he was just so blah. Mantis was almost forgettable, for me at least.
What about David Hasselhoff?
His one little cameo. No, I did like the cameo. I did like that he came out and you got the Hasselhoff in there for that 30 seconds or so.
Yeah. Not even. It was like 5 seconds.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's cool. So yeah, I think overall, rewatching this movie, this is one for me. I think I've only seen it a couple times before now, because it didn't hit me as hard the first time. It's not one that I've returned to as often. And I think that I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Is that I feel like something's missing out of this movie. Like, and I think it's just because that first movie's so good.
Yeah.
That it's because this one for me doesn't hit the same heights. It's extra disappointing. Like it's like, oh, it's just like all the ingredients are there. Yeah. And the meal just doesn't taste good.
It's something. You're right. It's something isn't like I said. Something's missing. It's somewhere. I honestly feel it's somewhere in the second act. Something is not connecting anymore. Because the third act, I love it, and maybe because my dad died when I was young, so seeing Yondu sacrifice himself like that, like I still tear up. I'm still like, you're like, and knowing it's gonna happen coming up, and I'm still tearing up. I'm like, dang.
I will definitely say by the time we get all of our characters together and they're all working together, so Gamora and Nebula have made up, Rocket and Yondu and Groot show back up, Mantis has joined their team. By the time we get to that, from that point forward, the movie sings. It's so good,
beautiful right there.
You get the battle between kind of Peter and Ego, but really Ego's fighting everybody, and you have them. The whole interplay with the bomb and Groot is very funny.
They don't have any tape.
Yeah, I mean, like all of that stuff works, and then of course the Yondu sacrifice that ultimately leads to the kind of the Viking funeral moment. That's really cool.
Oh, we even say Sylvester Stallone's in this.
And bringing back those characters, and I think the moment that hits me the hardest in that Viking funeral is actually Kraglin, who's played by Sean Gunn. So James Gunn's brother plays Kraglin. He's also the on-set Rocket. If you didn't know that, or you didn't watch our previous Guardians video where I told you that. But he, he gets a little bit more of a fleshed out role. He is in the first one, but he gets more to do in this movie. And that moment where, all the fireworks go off and he kind of has that emotional outburst, like, yes!
Yeah.
Like it's a really sweet moment.
It's a touching moment right there and I like that his character, he almost became a very well-depth character because you have him in the first film, those few shots, as the very loyal second mate and everything.
Yeah.
And in this one, he's still loyal, but it's one of those, I want to say what I'm going to say. And then he realizes, I just killed all my friends. Because of what he said, the mutiny starts because now people are like, well, wait, that's the second mate.
Okay.
First mate.
I just have to say this as we're talking about this character. Maybe the funniest joke in the whole movie is when Nebula is taking her ship and he's talking.
He's talking to her
about like what she's gonna do, and she's like, "I will hunt down Thanos," and like this whole like. I was thinking maybe like a pretty hat,
that was so sick.
It's just really fun.
It is because it's like, what do you say to that? And he just doesn't have anything to say. He's, okay, cool. Yeah. And I love it because he's so lost. But then I do like it because he says his line, the mutiny happens, and then all his friends are essentially killed.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he's like, "Here's your fin." He's the one that gives the fin to Yondu to help free them.
Yeah, that whole scene with Groot bringing back like a bunch of different things. The severed thumb.
Please tell me you just have a bun. He's just shaking his head.
Yeah.
We're never speaking of this again.
He thinks you want him to wear it like a hat. He doesn't like hats.
The joke comes back. The hat joke comes back. I forgot about that.
It's all good.
And that's what I like though, because he comes back and you see the regret on him, and he's like, "All my friends are dead," and it's such a little character, but he has so much depth to him. And I hope in the third film when it comes out, he's gonna take over now. He's trying to use the arrow.
I wonder where he was in Infinity War. Like we get Mantis and Nebula, that have clearly that have been part of this team moving forward. We know that Kraglin, was given the arrow, and this is one of those things where Yondu and that arrow were like way too powerful.
Oh gosh,
And so,
how are they powerful in the comics?
How are they going to bring Kraglin back with that? Is that going to be something that he just can't master, and so he's not as powerful? Like I don't know how that's going to work. I do wonder where he was in Infinity War.
Yeah.
And and then Endgame. Like why wasn't he there? Maybe he's in that giant final shot where I still don't know all of the characters.
Oh my gosh, nobody knows all the characters that were in that scene.
But yeah, it's one of those characters, like, I feel like they, at the end of Infinity War, they had to, dust Doctor Strange. Hulk, had to have that struggle, that internal struggle with him and Bruce Banner in Infinity War. Like, those different things, like, those major power characters that we kind of had to sideline. Yondu feels like one of those. It's like, well, we can't have him around in Infinity War.
No.
He's way too powerful.
Yeah, he'd kill off the whole damn army. I mean, and that's what I looked at it, because I have to reread my comics. He's an older one that I haven't kept up with. But I don't remember the arrow being that powerful in the comics.
It's crazy.
I mean, and I was trying to remember it every time. I was like, is it that powerful? I don't think so. And the fact that he could just stand there and kill off almost all his own Ravengers was ridiculous. I'm like, that's just ludicrous. There's no reason.
And they do that in the first movie too. Like he has that scene where he takes out all of the different, people after he crash lands on the planet. So they have shown this ability before, but yeah, I mean, like
not to this extent though.
It's crazy. It's so powerful, and they do break it in that final scene, like with Ego. Like they break the arrow, and you're like, okay, that's how they're gonna do it. But then Rocket repairs it and gives it to Kraglin.
And it's like, here you go.
I don't know.
And that's where I think at that point you almost kind of wrote yourself into a corner with Yondu, because now if he comes out again, he has to almost do the same thing and take, oh, we have an army? Hang on. They're all dead. You're good, man.
But he's dead. So.
Yeah. You almost had to kill him off at that point. But that like you said, that third act sings. And one thing I didn't notice the first time around, and heck, maybe like even my rewatches, but I noticed it this time. So at one point, everybody's getting beaten by Ego. He's getting Yondu's getting crushed by like the rocks.
Right.
Peter has all like the energy beams in him.
Yep.
Everything's going on. I didn't notice Groot's actually crying when everything's like crushing him. I was like, oh God, like you're actually gonna get crushed to death. And you're
right, because he's been delivering the bomb, and he's now being closed in on from sides, and it's almost like a baby cry. It's like,
Yes.
ah.
I never noticed it the first time around or second. And this one, and you actually see the tear running down his face because he knows he's gonna die probably, and it's just like, dang, like that actually hit that little 2 seconds that he showed that. I was like, that hit a lot harder than I thought.
So, all right, we've talked about this movie a lot. So, when it comes to the Infinity Saga, how does it fit into the overall arc? Obviously, we don't have any Infinity Stones here, but in terms of where this fits, so it's even though it comes out a few years after the original Guardians, it's only set a few months after. That's why we haven't seen a lot of Groot growing up, but we get that post-credit scene that's fast-forwarded in time, and teenage Groot that kind of sets up what happens in Infinity War.
That does.
And so it definitely fits in. And I would say the biggest thing that ties this into the Infinity Saga is that Gamora and Nebula relationship, them kind of becoming sisters, because that really is, it's an important plot point in Infinity War.
And it really is. I mean, the only other real tie-in you could say is how he was able to hold the Infinity Stone in the first film.
Sure, yeah.
Because, you're a Celestial, so you actually have godlike powers, you can hold it. That's really the only other tie-in I can think
according to this movie, by destroying Ego's planet, he no longer has that power.
So he couldn't try to do it in the later films, like, I can hold it, so I'll hold it, guys. Well, you really can't.
Right. So, anyways, those are kind of our thoughts. I do want to hear your final score for this movie. We've talked about a lot of things positive. We've talked about some negative things as well. Where do you fall on this movie?
So, I mean, I love, like I said, the third act, I'm in love with. If you just told me to look at the third act, I'd say it's 9 out of 10 kind of thing.
And the flashback scene of Kurt Russell.
And flashback scene of Kurt Russell. Yep. I mean, that would kind of be like, that's the movie right there. That's all I need. Good. But, looking at it all, I love the visual effects. Yeah. The particle effects, how small we can get them down to, the veins, especially the scene where Kurt Russell or Ego is talking to, I think it's to Peter, and you see every little thing coming back on him, there's only part of a bone, the muscle tissue, these tendons. All that was just really, really, really beautiful. I'm like, wow, the details of all of that. So visually, is what's going to kind of help me save this movie. Because again, the first 2 acts, I could live without. I honestly could just literally live without those 2 acts and just watch the last about 30, 40 minutes of the film. And I honestly would say, as much as I want to love this film, and I really do want to love it, I'm only going to give it a 6.5 on it. And that's just because those first 2 acts are so slow. Like you said yourself, the Sovereign Nation literally does not need to be there. We get talks more of the Ravengers. We get Sylvester Stallone coming out, showing off some of them, and
Miley Cyrus is in this movie. Oh, the robot talking head. That's Miley Cyrus.
Oh gosh. Never mind. Now can I give it a 1? I'm kidding. But no, seeing them at the end, maybe now we'll get more of the Ravengers in the third film because Sylvester Stallone comments in one of the post credits that, hey, we're back together now.
Back together, yeah. Stakar, I think is his name.
Something I can't remember his.
I believe, yeah.
So it's gonna be cool to see where it could go. But again, those first 2 acts are just. I'll be honest. This is probably one of the first ones I kind of almost started dozing off on because I was just the second act was dragging for me. Yeah. So yeah, I gotta cut it at 6.5.
I would definitely say that I'm kind of in the same boat with you. The humor doesn't work as much for me, but the movie does have a lot of heart. Yeah. I still love a lot of the relationships. It definitely fails with a couple of the characters. I don't have the same background with Mantis that you do, but I don't necessarily like what they do with that character either. Even without knowing all of that, I feel like it feels like there's something missing from her. Drax I definitely don't like in this movie. I don't like the Sovereign, but there's a lot of good. I like everything about those relationships. I like Baby Groot. Of course, he's adorable. When he gets angry and is during that scene where they're escaping from the ship and he attacks the guy, that's really good. Cute. I like that. Overall, this movie, again, even though the third act is really great and there is that great sacrifice moment, for me, I'm actually going to come in a little bit underneath you. Ooh. I'm going to throw this at a 6.2.
Ooh.
It's still a positive review. It's still, it's still going to be a good movie. But I definitely think this, for me, is in probably the bottom 5 of the MCU. Now, that doesn't mean I don't like it, because I pretty much like everything in the MCU. But that's definitely one of those things that I would say this movie falls short for sure.
And it really does. I was trying to look for one thing real quick, but I couldn't find it. Anyway. But yeah, it really does, man. I don't know. And like I said, I want to love this one so bad. You know, sitting down, getting ready to watch it, I was like, yeah, you know, I'm gonna watch the second one again. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
And then it was like, no. Second act, I was like, you know what? I can go do some laundry real quick or something. Like,
Yeah.
I'll come back.
It's,
which is the first movie I've ever done that on with these rewatches so far.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that it just doesn't quite get there.
No.
There's just something missing, like you said.
Yeah.
So, anyways, those are our thoughts on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Like this video, subscribe, guys, and we're continuing with this series. Next up, we've got Spider-Man: Homecoming. I'm gonna try and contain him during that video. He's gonna be talking about all kinds of comic history and all kinds of things that I just, you know, we're talking about the movie, Aaron.
I know, but I have 500 comics I need to read before we review this.
Okay.
To remember everything about Spider-Man.
We'll see if you can get there. So, anyways, guys, join us next time as we talk about that movie. And again, let us know what you think about this movie. So for Get Your Geek On, I'm Robert. That's Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us. And remember, stay geeky. What keeps you geeky? Let us know.